Okay, we're live. Okay, hello everyone. My name is Stacey Adelman. I'm a registered psychologist and founder of Joshua Tree Learning Center. And today I'm speaking with Darci Anderson, who is the founder of Flux Movement. So Darci and I have collaborated and teamed up on a few different projects now. And this last one that we're working on is Parkour for neurodivergent youth. So I was really drawn to Darci and her work with parkour and at Flux Movement because what I loved was that creative, intuitive kind of movement piece that wasn't necessarily dance, because I think some people, maybe dance isn't quite their thing, but it had that athletic, that movement, that physicality to it that really incorporated creative movement that I just think is so healthy and healing for so many individuals. So I just want to introduce Darci today and ask some questions. So Darci, thanks for chatting with us today. I guess, Darci, can you tell us more about Flux Movement? What brought you to Flux Movement? How did you come to this idea? It's very different than anything I've ever seen before. And so can you tell us a little bit more about what it's all about?
Yeah, sure. So Flux Movement, it is a little bit hard to pin down, as you just mentioned. It's definitely a multidisciplinary space. So we're drawing on a lot of different disciplines when it comes to physical movement. And it's a space that is really for ages 5 and up. We offer classes for age 5 and up. I think our oldest student right now is around 77. So it's a nice wide range of folks that are coming in. And I would say in many ways, it runs almost like a research lab. The classes are designed to be very collaborative. So there's a big emphasis on partnering and working with others. The classes are also designed to be very exploratory, much like you would imagine in a lab, almost speculative. So we never come in thinking, okay, I have the answers. It's more about the pleasure of speculation of, okay, if we do this, what is going to unfold? So there's a big imaginative, speculative component to it. The classes are really about introducing people to new situations and new variables. And I guess we come to this sort of approach by virtue of the name Flux. I named it that because it evokes constant change. And I think, we have this urge often to kind of want to keep the world standing still for just a moment so we can, grab hold of it. But of course, the reality is that the world is never going to really stand still for us. And our bodies are constantly having to co-compose, if you will. We're constantly co-composing with others. We're constantly co-composing with our environment. And so it's really, it can be tough because in many ways, it's about relinquishing some of that control and allowing the environment or others to talk back to you. So you're in an actual relationship with it. So I guess that makes Flux a little bit, unique compared to other physical movement spaces. We foreground much less sort of rote mechanical learning, and we try and open up spaces for playfulness. And now that is not to say it's not rigorous, because play can be quite rigorous. And I think that's a part that people forget about. It's it's a play, it's just a free for all. But I wouldn't agree with that. So yeah, it's about this idea that control is really an illusion, and let's deal with variability in a group type setting.
Okay, fantastic. So I learned about parkour from you. I saw your videos and I was really interested and curious about it. Can you tell us a little bit about what parkour is?
Sure. So there's so many YouTube videos out there that suggest parkour as one thing, but I will say at its very basic level, parkour is simply the navigation of your environment. It has its history is in France, in Paris, in the suburbs of Paris, which are known to be impoverished spaces. A lot of newcomers, not a lot of money. And so it was started by a group of teenagers, really, and they're just relating and creating in relationship to their environment. So it's, we often think it's about the big heroic jumps and what you see on YouTube and stuff, but really in its simplest sense, it's about how you are going to relate to the world and how you're going to physically move and maneuver, scurry, scamper, jump, detour through your environment.
Okay. I love that. So when I think of that from a therapeutic type of perspective, or working with kids or teens or adults, those are all concepts we explore in the office, right? So we talk about, I come from a teaching background. I taught for many, many years. And so we talk about teaching and what is good teaching. And for me, it's experiential. It's embodying an experience. So I can talk about, facing obstacles and persevering and being resilient and all of the components that are tied into that. But to me, the best teaching happens when you can actually physically embody that experience. You're going to just learn it on such a deeper level. It becomes more personally meaningful. There's value to it. And when I think of it, from a healing perspective, we know physicality, moving the body, heals the brain. We need the brain and the body are connected. So we need to engage the body to work with the brain. The two have to work together. So there's just so many avenues that this type of movement, that parkour, can be healing and beneficial for so many individuals on so many levels. So yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, I agree. And it's been, such a great journey to be working with you and with Joshua Tree, because it resonates, what you're saying really deeply resonates with me. And I think, from a very early age, there's an entrainment that happens that this is what proper gestures look like. This is what it means to learn. This is what it means to, and what it looks like to relate to others. And it just starts at such an early age, and any sort of, divergence from that is just so often taken as errancy, or as it's just wrong. Whereas, and again, like with parkour, detours are encouraged. It's literally, the practice of it is about, I say, skizzing along the edges, finding ways, if you can't jump over it, maybe you can scurry under it. Maybe you can scramble around it, so it's, as you said, it has to be in many ways for it to resonate. It has to be practiced in the body. And I think that goes, for anything really. It's about practicing it. That's
exactly
so critical.
And developing a feel for that, right? And what that's like. So when I would work in schools, for example, I like to go out onto the playground, because that's where I feel, so many kids, or their learning was at their best. We know that when we're active, we're physically active, the brain is at a really nice learning state, right? And so it's activated. And when the brain is activated, that's when I feel I can come in and do my best work, because now I can provide the coaching or the recommendations or things to think about, or, because the brain is now in a learning state. Right. And so it just lends itself, when I'm working with neurodivergent youth, for example, I need to meet them with where they're at and how they learn best, rather than this idea of constantly trying to pull them into this other world that doesn't work for them. I need to go into their world. And so I think the best way to do that is through physical movement. I can do a little bit of that in the office, but when I saw what was happening at Flux Movement, I thought that's where I need to go, because it allows people to be individuals. It's not this structured kind of learning environment that sometimes happens in, maybe organized sports, for example. It allows for that creative component. So now I'm seeing kids with their brains in its best learning state. Now I can come in and provide some of that coaching and guidance and support that they are requiring. So yeah, that's what drew me to it. And I think it's been a really good experience. So from your perspective, what are some of the benefits of parkour specifically to the neurodivergent community and with youth in particular?
Yeah. So I think, I mean, you're certainly more of an expert in this than I am, but from the reading and research I've done, and then just experientially, I think, again, because parkour is, by definition, it's about seeing your landscape. And it's about, there is, in a sense, a heightened perception that takes place. So we call that, we refer to that as putting on your parkour glasses or your parkour vision. And so, we put your glasses on, and you start to see the world differently. And I think that that's so important for neurodivergent youth and adults. For anyone who, whose brain is working a little bit differently, is that it actually offers an opportunity where it's okay to see the world differently and to perceive it differently, and maybe even to be catching things that that neurotypical logic isn't catching on or isn't recognizing. And so it doesn't start from a model of deficit. It's actually, it can, if it's done well and in a nourishing environment, parkour can be about, look, the fact that you take in so much at any given moment, which we know, is part of that neurodivergence. Maybe in some ways that you can use that to your advantage, and maybe you're going to be picking up on things and possibilities and ways of being in parkour, but even beyond that in the world, that will actually be, really beneficial, and that even neurotypicals would benefit from learning from, for instance.
Yes, exactly.
That's what I love about it.
Yeah, and I think in one of our first sessions together, I got excited because I noticed what you were doing is you were picking up on the natural movements of the kids in the group. Rather than you demonstrating and say, okay, copy me, you looked at what they were doing and then went from there. It's this idea of going to the individual and building on where they're already at, again, as opposed to pulling them over to what you want them to do. Right.
Yeah. I think, gosh, I think any teacher, anyone that's, working with others, it's always that kind of that balance of making sure that you're not hardening your methodology or, making your pedagogy or your approach to learning so concrete that there's just one way, because you do, like, it is, parkour is about meeting your environment, allowing your universe to speak back to you, allowing others to speak back to you. It's so call and response.
Yeah.
That sociality to it. And then on the other side of it, it's very much, it offers time to just goof around.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, that a different kind of sociality where, you do some lines, you have some fun, and then maybe there's, a few, 30 seconds, a minute of chit chat, and then you get back to work. It's a very different sociality to it than like the rigid structuring, I guess, of a class.
Yeah, it's that whole idea of free play and just bringing that back, and how important that is for our kids, how important it is for adults.
Yes.
Just engage and play. Like we forget that sometimes, that so much of our basic learning, basic processes, basic emotional regulation, that all comes back to free play, right? Yeah. And we got to get back to that for sure. I really liked, as well, like the sensory integration with this. So when I work with so many individuals, I'm finding ways to help them calm their body or find a state of calm, or find a state of alertness, for example. And so we do that with sensory integration, with pushing, with pulling, with hauling, right? And parkour is in all of that, right?
Yes.
They're doing all of that. They're doing so much climbing. Can you speak a little bit about the sensory experiences about parkour?
Yeah. Again, it's because I keep coming back to this, but it's because it's about that responsivity to your surroundings. One never really knows what they could possibly encounter. So you're constantly being exposed to different surfaces. So it's very different, doing a simple step vault over a nice vault that's, nice, smooth and there presented sort of in front of you, versus going outside and using a rail, for instance. And so that's another, it's a little bit harder in our climate.
Yeah.
Degrees, but we do try and get kids outside and take them. Often I make it a game. So I'll be, this week, it's a surprise. You're going to find out a few days before, this is your next location, and we're all going to meet up here. And then the coaches and we just scout out ahead of time, find these spaces. And again, then you're dealing with different concrete. You're dealing with unstable, shaky surfaces. Maybe they're wet. Now you're also having to integrate, in terms of your senses, the public, which is a huge part of it, because then there's that level of performativity to it that perhaps wasn't there before. So yeah, that again, it just by definition, that sensory integration is really just part and parcel of what parkour is, and so important, so important.
You talked about too, like we talked a little bit how it is rigorous and it is really good fitness, right? And I think, again, from an emotional regulation standpoint, that's critical. We all know fitness is just so part and parcel for facilitating good mental health, right? So it's just so healthy in that regard. So it's reducing stress and anxiety, and it's just overall, it's just a healthy movement kind of activity. And you're using your entire body. You're not just isolating certain areas of the body. The whole body is engaged, including your brain. Your brain is working and incorporating that creativity to it, and playfulness as well. So what I also love is, like, we've talked a lot about resilience and parkour, and that's kind of what this group is actually titled, Resilience and Parkour. So it teaches kids how to work with obstacles and how to get creative and working with obstacles, right? And how they approach it, how they persevere. And so I think that's really critical in terms of parkour as well.
I think for neurodivergent youth or adults, I think, transitions can be tricky.
Yes.
And parkour, again, is all transition. You're always already thinking about your next move. What the next thing is that you are going to confront. And so again, it's the practice of it. It doesn't, and I'm certainly not saying that, just not a romanticized view of it, that it's easy, because it isn't. And gosh, you come and watch grown-ups trying to relinquish some control, and not sort of do that more rote mechanical learning, and having to constantly adapt to these different variables and transitioning. It's really challenging. But as you said, it's the repetition, it's the practice of it, so that it does become embodied. You don't have that mind-body disconnect that, is still haunting, the Western, like, modernity. It's just part of who we are. It's really hard to shed. So I do like that part too, because I see the kids, they come in and they're kind of tiptoeing around the objects, kind of treating them maybe with a bit of suspicion, and then they get their hands on it, they get their feet on it, they're climbing on it, they're pulling on it, they're pushing it, they're jumping, and it's just that again, that full body integration that happens. And again, is that like, such is life. This is
That's right.
The world is not going to stand still for us to control it long enough to control it. And just as we get control, there's a transition.
That's exactly it. And how do we adapt, and how do we move through it? And yeah, and the work with planning, right? And I think that's something we were working on right in our very first class, was planning and how to move through that obstacle course that you had created.
Yeah.
Right. It was really, really cool. I think the final part that I really love about this approach is the transference of skills. So, for example, I can work with so many individuals, maybe in a classroom or in my office, where we know it, again, in our head. Kids would know what I'm trying to teach them. If I ask them to write it down, it's all there. They know exactly what needs to happen. So I'm speaking maybe from certain social skills, or dealing with certain issues that they're having maybe on playgrounds or at school or what have you. They know it. It's not that they don't know it. It's the transference of the skills from one environment to another. And I think part of that is that we have to, again, meet them with where they're at and where the brain is in its best learning state. And that is when it's moving, but also when it's something personally meaningful and valuable, then I'm going to embody that and be able to transfer that skill to another environment or another situation, right? So I feel I really wanted something like this that was a lot more experiential, movement based, to help facilitate that transference of skills.
Yeah, I agree. It's, as you said, they know it. They, on a theoretical level, they know it. They know how they're supposed to act, the proper response, the proper gesture. But again, I guess to me, it comes back to this idea that we're just these fully formed bodies that just enter the world fortified. And then we kind of get punched in the face and surprised, because we're having to we're not controlling the environment, but we're having to react in relation to it, and in relation to other people. And sometimes I just think if we could just allow for that, I think, maybe we'd be inventing many more ways of looking at the world and being in relation to one another. I really believe that, but we tend to have the sense that we enter a situation and we're armored, we're fortified, and now we kind of conquer this situation,
right?
And I think that, as you said, it kind of can. I think it can maybe set a person up for disappointment, because it doesn't necessarily, as you said, transfer outside of that one given situation. It's about the how. It's about how you're moving through that environment, what you're opening yourself up to. But again, that's the practice of it.
The practice
you can't just declare it.
No, exactly. And that's the creativity and looking at the world differently, and how can I interact with that and be successful, right?
Yes.
And have fun with it, that it doesn't have to be this onerous kind of difficult thing. Like, we can actually have fun with obstacles and experiment and be creative with them. It doesn't have to be so terrible. It can be a really good, fun, playful kind of time where we don't take learning so seriously. We can fail, we can fall and turn it into something.
Yeah, I think that's just refreshing to think like learning doesn't have to be so serious. And so I forget who said it, but they said, "Do you always joke around this much?" And the person responded, only for the most serious of matters. Do I joke this much? So I don't know. Yeah, I think there's that playfulness, and just
definitely freedom, like just a freedom to it. And finally, I love the collaborative piece,
Mm,
right? It's an individual, allows for that individual creativity and movement and expression of self, which is so, in my opinion, is just so critical for everyone. But then there's that strong collaborative piece of working together. And that's a really big part of what we're doing at each and every class.
yeah. Yeah. You have to share the world with others.
Yeah.
And so doing it in this, as you said, it's this fun and lively, engaging environment. It's a great place to work on that.
Yeah. So really meeting new friends, meeting new people,
Yeah.
and just having fun with new people
Yeah.
has been a big part of this group. So yeah. Well, is there any other parting thoughts, about parkour and the neurodivergent kind of world and how it can all work together?
I think, no, I think we've covered quite a bit. I'm pretty pleased with what we've talked about, getting the word out there about parkour, because it's still it's relatively unknown. And again, there's a lot of misconceptions about it. So
Well, and you know what? Again, I guess the last thing I'm thinking of too is with parkour, what I've loved too is that you can take it anywhere.
yes,
You're teaching them the skills. We're in a gym
yeah,
right now because it's so cold outside. Um, but you can take that anywhere. I mean, you can do parkour in the farm. You can do it out in the city. It's something that kids or adults always have with them. It's not like you have to go out and buy a set of
no.
barbells or an exercise machine, right? It's something you can do wherever you are.
And the bonus is that you're becoming creative in the process, because often you're creating something out of nothing or very
Yeah.
little, right?
Yeah.
So and sometimes for grownups that are getting into parkour, it's actually it's their physical quality of life. I've had students tell me, if I don't address, my knee, I can't navigate stairs. I can't, in other words, I can't navigate this obstacle. I might have to sell my house.
Yeah.
Um, and so, this idea of confronting obstacles, it can be like, a very serious matter. And
Exactly.
yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, there's a lot of really amazing classes at Flux other than parkour. Can you tell us about some of the other course offerings there?
Yeah, for sure. We have our longevity through movement class. Again, it's a lot of improvisation and working in with partners in different physical situations. We emphasize some rhythm and coordination, which again, timing, rhythm is pretty much in everything in human movement. That's a very lively class, full of energy, different ages, different levels. Sometimes we do work with, I work with a lot of folks that are in, chronic pain. So
Mhm.
we approach pain and trying to manage and that sort of thing. But we try and get away from, I would say, like a rehab mode, and we try and look again at the body as this complex whole.
Yeah.
So that's really important. I think, like, it's because so many people do come and they have a knee issue, they have a low back issue. It's about, okay, so we have these limitations, but what are we still able to do? And working from there. And often, again,
Yeah.
it's through the situation that is presented, the physical challenge. That's they're figuring out the answer on their own. They're in with their body. I say they, but
Yes.
it's the
Yes.
mind body. So it's not me as this expert, do this, do this, do this. Sometimes, yes, I have to,
Yeah.
make adjustments for sure. But it's a very different approach where it's the environment that is in many ways becoming the teacher or engendering the learning process. So
Yeah.
then that's pretty much all of our classes, or you know developed in that regard.
Well, and that's just so in alignment with my philosophy of the work I do as well, is I just believe people have it within themselves to
Right.
figure things out and what they need to do.
Yeah.
We just facilitate or set up the opportunity to help them explore that
Yeah.
or help them work through that. So awesome.
Hmm.
Well, thank you so very much for
We can
meeting with
talk about this stuff.
me. Yeah, I love talking about this stuff. So thank you, Darci, for doing that. And
Pleasure.
Flux Movement, you're located right downtown,
Yeah,
right?
at the YWCA.
Yes.
In
Okay.
the basement. Yeah.
Well, and it's downstairs in that.
Yes, downstairs. We have about 5,000 square feet down there. It's a big,
Yeah.
big space.
Yes, fun space. So, yeah, parkour for neurodivergent youth. Our group is underway right now, and I think this is something we'll definitely be looking at continuing in the future, depending on schedules and things like that. But yeah, I'll see you actually today, Darci, in a couple of hours. And
Yep.
yeah,
Absolutely.
if you guys have any questions or any comments or further, inquiries, feel free to reach out to me, Stacey at joshuatreelearning.com, or you can call our office at 306-546-5674. You can also reach out to Darci at Flux Movement. What's your email there, Darci?
Hello at fluxmovementpractice.com.
Awesome. All right. So thank you so much for joining us today. And Darci, I'll see you at the gym.
Yes. We'll see you soon.
All right. Okay. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.